Wow, we're here. Hey, everybody, this is JVL here with my colleagues, AB Stoddard and Sam Stein, and my very best friend in the whole world, Sarah Longwell of the Bulwark. Welcome to the beginning of the end of America's democratic experiment. It's going to be a great night. We're so glad we can all do this together. AB, why don't you set the table for us? The Mistress of Darkness. It's been a while since we've been able to break bread and talk about this. On a scale of 1 to 100, how terrible are things going to be tonight?
Well, I read the triad today, so I know even if it goes.
This is why
really
I skipped
well,
the triad.
Even if it goes really well, everything is terrible. I have PTSD from June 27th when JVL made me join Bill for some after comment. And so I've been nauseous for a day and a half. Look, I know she can do it. I'm just going to say, I think it's, and I'm not trying to lower expectations. I'm trying to level set rationally. All Trump has to do tonight is show up and not say she's a nasty woman, not say anything else misogynistic or racist, not froth at the mouth, and he gets a good score.
Tonight is the night that he finally became president.
Exactly.
Right. The New York Times can write that tomorrow.
I was just thinking of Van Jones a few hours ago. And she has to do so much. She has to play perfect defense. She has to fact check Trump. Biden could not do that. The moderators don't do that. She has to counterattack. She has to fill in the gaps between what voters know about her in these key swing states and what she wants them and needs them to know about her. And that's pretty vast right now. And she has to project strength. And it's a lot.
Sarah, would it be wrong for Vice President Harris to refer to Trump as this fat old man on stage? Just like literally talk about him like he is somebody in a nursing home in the third person. Would that be wrong? I feel like that would be strength.
I think it would be suboptimal, actually. I do think she has to avoid being down at his level. But here's a thought. That actually all of us with this exercise of like what Kamala Harris needs to do is just us manifesting our own anxiety, right? And like projecting it onto her about all this stuff she's got to do. And that actually, I think what she needs to do is like be as close to authentically herself as possible. And so if what feels authentic to her in the moment is that Donald Trump is heaving and wheezing and blustering in some way, and she's able to say, "Are you okay, old
Grandpa?
Sir? Is there anything I can do to help you?" That could be a nice moment for her. But what I want her to do is have a strong command of the substance, strong command of the stage. My preference is that she not engage. Look, I think if she lands a couple things on him, fine, but I think they have to be a little more extemporaneous. People can smell the canned stuff and they can smell the inauthenticity. And I think when she struggles is when she's over prepped, she's worried about what she's going to say. And I think when she excels is when she's talking the way that feels good to her. And so like, I hope she's loose tonight and she comes in ready to kind of do her thing.
Sam, what do you think about just the battle space here in terms of what people's expectations are and what they need to do? I mean, Trump is obviously coming in to try to drive up her negatives because he's at like minus 17 or whatever he's at net favorable, and she's at basically even, right? I mean, he has a very simple task, which is, I think, to just go in there and go full aggro and make people decide they can't vote for her, because he knows that his 46.9% is basically baked.
Yeah,
what do you think? Like, what is?
Well,
could that backfire against him? What does this all look like as we?
So I kind of base this all on what Sarah wrote earlier this week.
Smart.
Which yeah, I mean, I know who writes the paychecks. And it comes down to like there's this swath of voters who really don't like Trump and are willing to give Harris consideration, but they need to hear more from her. And like Trump knows this, and Harris knows this, and we know this, and everyone knows this is not overly complicated stuff here, right? She's, despite being vice president for 3.5 years, she's just not that well known. And so then you put that whole calculation in the prism of a debate, and then you say to yourself, well, what does that mean, right? And for Trump, JVL's right. It means like tar the hell out of her, just like throw everything against her, portray her in the worst, most unflattering, terrible light possible. And for Harris, it's don't get into the muck with Trump. Like present a relatively positive vision for yourself and show your competence. And Sarah pointed this out too, but like there's a few issues that she needs to address, which is can she stand up to autocratic world leaders on the stage? Luckily, she has some sort of a proxy for that in Trump himself. And then secondly is can she, really adopt the mantle of change? And this, I think, gets to what JVL sort of was saying. I would not do the fat shaming, but the old shaming certainly seems fine to me, right? Like you're the politics of the past. No one wants to do that again. Like we all lived through COVID
you can't
under
even
you.
string three words together. Look at you.
Right. And if you can just make that, again, we're all sort of like diagnosing from fire, but I feel like if those two things, if you can make those things work by the end of the night, that you look competent and forceful, someone who could stand up to world leaders. And then secondly, you can really grab that mantle of change. Then I think it's a successful night for her.
AB, I want to give you some conservative comfort food, some never Trump, old school Republican. I was taping a show with Mona today, and Mona said, people forget that in 1980, Reagan and Carter were basically tied going into the first debate. And what happened was Reagan came out of the first debate and just the expectation was that he was a lightweight or he was dangerous or he was a warmonger. And he just presented himself like, okay, no, this guy is a viable presidential candidate. And following the first debate, his numbers took off and, we wound up in a landslide election. That's wishful thinking, right? We're too polarized for something like that again.
Why is that wishful? I don't feel like that's wishful at all.
I think we're not going to have landslide fantasies, but I do think Sarah's right. If she is trying to be herself, she should also lean into the things that she conveyed at the convention, that knowing that a lot of people just didn't watch her convention speech. It was late at night. It was the fourth night. They're not politically engaged. This might be the first time that they're really listening to her. And I think that, watching the debate she did with Pence in 2020, she did that. She talked about her mom. She smiled a lot. She looked into the camera. And she looked like she was having a good time. Very different from the 2019 crowded stage debates of the primary. And so I think that she knows her assignment. It's just, like Sarah said, a question of being her genuine self, relaxing enough into her real self that people look at her like they did Reagan and say, that's just a normal person who has a plan to turn the page. They have a serious policy agenda. They're normal. It's time to turn the page and leave this whole era and this guy in the past. And she doesn't have to be charming. And I think Sarah also makes another point. She likes to use canned stuff. So it seems contrived and painful. So she's going to have to resist that. But reliving the debate from 2020 was comforting. She just was better than Pence. And if she can do that tonight, I don't think landslide will happen, but I think she improves her numbers.
If a fly could land weirdly on Trump's head while this happens, that would be so great. It'd be so great.
Oh, a little footnote from the past. The little fly, Mike Pence's fly.
So can I read something to you? So
please.
I got this DM today.
Is it a newsletter?
No, I did not read your newsletter today. It was like Sarah depression bait, and I refused to engage. But I did get a DM from a musical person, a singer, songwriter who I used to listen to, who watches our stuff. She sent me a great DM that I am going to share with you, because she was saying she was watching all of the people talking about what Kamala needed to do.
Is it Ani DeFranco?
No. But it's
Is it one of the Indigo Girls? Was it an Indigo girl?
No. But you're on, part of what you're saying is in the right, you've got, there's some things that are correct in that.
Sarah McLachlan?
No. Okay. Stop guessing.
Okay.
Here we go. All right. So she was listening to a panel and she was like, here are my takeaways. Women must display strength, but not too much because you'll come off as bitchy. Be pretty, but not too pretty because you'll come off as asking for and benefiting from the male gaze. Also, pretty women make men feel weird. So be mindful of how your beauty affects others. Be smart, but not too smart. Nobody likes to know it all. Be nice. Women must always be nice. There's no wiggle room on this one. Make sure everyone knows you're experienced and capable, but you must not brag about yourself. You must remain humble, especially in the presence of men. Kamala must play Beethoven's Hammerklavier? Hammerklavier? Well, I don't know. Without a mistake. And Trump's task is to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star on a kazoo. And I thought, that feels right. That feels
Classic,
right.
Isn't that
classic
the America Ferrara
Alanis
monologue from
Morissette
Barbie?
right there.
This is so right that I just want to set a split screen for us. We have Liz Cheney with Kamala Harris, and we have Laura Loomer with Donald Trump, an insane person, like just a person who is actually insane.
But two insane people, they keep each other company.
And everyone's just like, yeah, just
Yeah, but
it's like that New York Times thing where you're like, Kamala Harris has a plan to build many thousands of housing units, and Donald Trump wants to forcibly, expatriate 15 million people and then appropriate their housing. So they both have plans to address the housing crisis.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean that was this past week, man. There was all this debate about, well, what is the right effective tax rate on unrealized capital gains? Is it like 28 or 39, or should we reduce it? And then meanwhile, Trump's like, we're going to just deport 15 million people. It's going to be bloody. And it's like, what are we talking about? These are two different universes. And as for Loomer, because Loomer is, I feel like people don't appreciate it. He used to not want to be seen with Loomer. He kind of realized it was not appropriate and or politically bad for him to be seen with Laura Loomer. Now he's just sort of prancing around with it. He just doesn't care. And there's all this talk about, is Liz Cheney bad for Harris because for support for the Iraq War and stuff like Dick Cheney and stuff like that. It's like, on the one hand, you have Dick Cheney, and the other hand you have Laura Loomer. It's like, can we weigh these things properly? Can we do that?
No, we can't. This is clear.
We can, but obviously
we can.
broader.
No, but the American public can't.
Right.
And this is the problem. This is the problem. I'm sorry, this is the problem, right? In the long run, this is not sustainable. If the American public can't distinguish between Laura Loomer and Liz Cheney, then why are we even bothering?
JVL, what is the name of the most normal person at National Review? His name is Ramesh Panruhu. Yeah,
Panuru.
Okay. So Ramesh had a piece in the Washington Post this week that was like, Liz Cheney made a good, strong case against Trump. She didn't make a case for Harris. And then he goes on to equate Senator Sheldon Whitehouse's proposal that involves changing the courts, doing term limits, and a couple other things that I kind of don't like. But with Trump's refusing to engage in the peaceful transfer of power. Now, I'd like to say that one of them is a thing that would go through the normal course of our legislative process. It is a bill that will be debated and, let's be real, defeated. But it is going to go through the normal. And Donald Trump just acts extra constitutionally, meaning outside of the Constitution. But same, guys, from the best that the National Review has to offer. Like, he is the best one. He's the most sane one. But he said this is deeply dangerous. And therefore, what is a person to do? How could we possibly weigh it? To
the debate. This is the challenge for the moderators, right? It's like they can ask pointed questions about Harris's policy record, and I'm assuming they will. But like, the question the moderators have to grapple with is just like, how much emphasis do you put on that versus the other stuff that Trump's involved in? And also, more importantly, perhaps, is which comes first, right? Like, how do you editorially stress the topics tonight? And I think that's going to be very important. Like, it really does matter how the viewers perceive to be the sort of raw points of vulnerabilities for each candidate, and that comes down to the moderators in ABC and how they want to do this.
Vice President Harris, you've gone back on your position on fracking.
Right.
Former President Donald Trump, your vice presidential pick is scheduled to appear on stage with Tucker Carlson, who just hosted a neo-Nazi on his podcast. Same. They're both the same thing. Like, this is just.
But JVL, do you think he's going to get asked about that? I don't.
No, of course not. Of course not.
He could get asked. His vice president just recently said he wouldn't have certified the election, but that's sort of old news because Donald Trump certainly wouldn't encourage anybody to certify the election. Will he get asked about, will he accept the election results? Does he still believe the 2020 election was stolen? Why does he keep classified documents in his bathroom? Why didn't he return them when he was ordered to? How does he feel about being an adjudicated rapist since we talked to him last as president? How does he feel about the 34 felonies that, a jury of his peers convicted him of? I don't know. There's like a lot of places to go, but she's gotta definitely figure out how to go on offense on immigration.
Yeah, this is.
She is going to be prepared to go on defense on immigration, and then I guess try to go on some offense. I remember from June 27th that none of the questions that Sarah just raised were asked.
Right.
Yeah. Do you guys remember that? This is.
I don't remember that debate. What happened?
That we were like 40 minutes into it before there was like a single democracy question, and then it was kind of in passing. And like if they ask him about the peaceful transfer of power, he'll say something like, "Yeah, so long as the election is fair," or something like that, and they'll just let him get away with it, right? Because this is the media just there to call balls and strikes. They're not on the side of democracy. That would be taking sides.
But maybe she won't. I mean, this is where my hope is. And look, I also have PTSD from the last debate. I was like on a stage, did one of these pre-shows where I talked about what Biden needed to do in the debate, and then 5 minutes.
Yeah, you did the Atlantic's pre-show, right?
No, it was the Aspen Ideas Festival. No. But then we had to sit and watch the debate. And then we had to come on after and be like, let me tell you guys what just happened. And I was like, he has to drop out. Like, this is, so I feel like that bar can get cleared tonight. That's my big.
Oh, wow. Really bold prediction there. Yeah. Let's set the bar like below the subterranean.
Boy, really heading out there, Sarah. It's a little, I gotta say, so I used to, be a big nerd for these debates, and I would sit there, and I remember the Gore W. Bush debates, and I was writing stuff for the Weekly Standard then, and I had a conceit where I would score it like a boxing round, question by question, and I just dug these things in the same way that I would nerd out over, going to the New Hampshire primary and following around the Iowa caucus. And I never, prior to 2016, ever felt like, like really important stuff was hanging on it. And I don't like living in this space where we're sitting here 10 minutes before the debate starts and we're all kind of like, gee, I wonder if we'll, still have a free and fair election in 4 years. I don't know. It just feels very bad. Am I the only one? Do you guys? I don't know. Like,
well,
say
no,
again?
you're very dark, but I gather that's the sort of natural demeanor. But I think you and I talked about this, or maybe it was brought up in one of our staff meetings. But like, there is something inherently darker about this run, right? Like, it's the third time he's run for office. In 2016, it was bad, but you sort of didn't really know what to expect. And there was some part of you that probably was like, oh, this is all kind of like a show. And this guy,
the really American people can't actually vote for this guy.
Well, even that though, I was like, some people probably were like, in his heart, he's a cosmopolitan New Yorker who's like kind of rational maybe. And obviously that wasn't the case. And then 2020, it was, he's the incumbent. He was saddled with all this stuff. We knew the record, and he was ousted. And this time around, the darkness, I think, is owed to the fact that we saw everything, and January 6th happened, and at least 46 to 47% of the country is like, I'm okay with this, and I don't really care what happens. And it wasn't Trump, but it was the podcast JD Vance was on with the Silicon Valley guys yesterday that really kind of shook me in this way, which is that these guys who in theory are rational, smart people, were pressing him on the stuff around certification of the election. Clearly they thought it was, Pence did the right thing, and they wanted JD Vance to say that Pence did the right thing, and he didn't do it. And then they were pressing him on immigration, being like, look, you don't really want to like shut down all immigration. Like, that's crazy, right? And then they're pressing him on Lena Khan, be like, you really don't you think mergers and acquisitions are important. And he kept saying, no. And all of them were like, okay, cool, we're going to vote for you. And it's just like the willingness to sort of disregard stuff that is bad, and to live through January 6th and say, let's ride it again. Let's get on that train again. I think that's what makes both this a darker election, and it makes the stakes for nights like tonight seem so existential.
Which I'll just add on to that. The reason it feels darker is because the bad stuff before was about Trump. If we reelect Trump, it's about what it says about us.
It's us.
It's about what it says about who we are as a country, right? What couldn't happen here, we wouldn't tolerate it, falls away. And that's like a lot to sit with.
I mean, we are living in a world in which Trump is likely to increase his vote share, having followed an attempted coup.
Maybe. You don't know that.
I don't know it, but I think that the more likely scenario is that his vote share goes up by like 1/10 or 2/10 of a point. And it's possible it could go down by 1/10 or 2/10 of a point. But January 6th will not, in a meaningful way, affect his vote share.
He
Totally.
has a broader coalition now.
Yeah.
He has new converts after January 6th.
But he's also lost people.
Democrats.
He's also lost people, and we don't know the net effect of these trades at the moment.
True. It's bad that it's a trade.
It is
and
bad.
not an exodus.
I'm not saying it's not bad. I'm just, guys, I'm doing my best here. Okay? I'm not going to let JVL and AB just drag us into the darkness. We have to listen. Right now we could be.
I'm glad you don't regard me in the same category. I still have some optimism in me, I guess.
No, these two are so bleak, especially when they're together. They like.
We should bring Bill on. It could get even worse. Jeez.
No, Bill's an optimist next to us. Believe me.
That's insane to me. As editor of the Morning Shots, I feel like it's just bleak all the time.
Do you ever read my newsletter, Sam?
I do. Today was really wretched. I was worried about you. Thought we need to send someone over to your house. What was why did you wake up and you're like, you know what? I just want to just absolutely destroy people's day. Is that what happened today?
That's what I call days that end in Y.
No, that's not true. There's been some more happy.
It's been a weird 6 weeks. It's been a weird 6 weeks where things suddenly looked pretty good.
Can I ask you guys a question about that? Because my last day before coming here at my old job was the last debate. And so I've been asking people at the Bulwark what that night was like, and heading into that. And I'm kind of curious, heading into that night versus heading into this night, how you guys feel. I'm talking about before you saw Biden with his face plant. Like, were you all three in the same sort of mental space you are now, or do you feel a bit better now? Like, what's the vibe?
I was cautiously optimistic. I'll speak for myself. I thought the guy has answered the bell every time he's been asked to. He just did it at the State of the Union. He did it when he went to Israel. It gave a bunch of speeches. Like, has he lost a step? Yes. But every time he's been asked, he's answered the bell. Right. I thought he would do it again. And he did. And it was obvious by at the first commercial break.
The bell answered him.
We went to, I think it was me, Mona, and AB.
The bell tolled.
Commercial break.
The bell tolled for him.
And, the first thing I said was, I said, we are witnessing a historic catastrophe.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I didn't need to wait past the first commercial. There was no attempt to try to talk ourselves out of it. I would say this is just before AB and Sarah answer, this is a thing for people who are listening who may be new to the Bulwark. The deal is that we are on the side of democracy, like really, really vehemently. There are no both sides to this, but we don't do happy talk or hopium. And we tell you what's actually happening and what we're seeing in front of us. We're not here to spin for, everybody here wants Kamala Harris to do very well. Nobody is going to lie to you if she doesn't. Like, that's just not what we do. So anyway, Sarah and AB, where were you guys Sarah, you were kind of with me in cautious optimism, weren't you?
I was. Look, I remember what I said before they were debating, which was that I thought, Joe Biden needed to show up and he needed to disabuse people, because I had been listening to focus groups. We have concerns about his age. He needed the guy who was at the State of the Union had to show up and be the same guy, had to be energetic, and make people feel comfortable that he could do the job for 4 more years. And he did the opposite of that within the first 25 seconds. And, you know, I also thought a lot about whether or not, you know, there's always the factor of Trump, right? Like, how is Trump going to be? Because Trump tanked himself in the Joe Biden Donald Trump debate in 2020. He came in, remember, he had COVID. He was trying to kill Joe Biden with COVID. He was heaving like a lunatic and seemed like a monster. And I remember doing the focus groups after that and everybody being like, this guy is crazy. I can't vote for this guy. What was that? What insanity is this? And he let Joe Biden self-immolate on that stage. And so the question is tonight, I do think that as long as she's calm and like she has a million times more assets than Joe Biden did there in that, and Donald Trump is still the same person. He can be easily rattled. He is an old man. He word salads himself. Now he is pretty good debater. He is. But I did feel cautiously optimistic there. I actually feel more optimistic now. I think it is the PTSD speaking in part because the last one was so bad. And also just the stakes now are so high. Like she has upside. She has upside she can go grab. But like tonight's the night she's got to grab it. She has to.
AB, where were you?
I was not doing commercial break with you. Bill and I talked to you after the debate.
Oh, right.
I had an ominous sick feeling starting from the minute I woke up that Thursday. I had chest pains, digestive issues. It was like I knew I just knew it was going to be bad.
This is the content you get on the Bulwark, folks.
Yeah.
AB's digestive issues.
Guys. You know, keeping it real. Keeping it real. I mean, I had stomach pains. I knew that Joe Biden was going to have to be unscripted without his teleprompter for 90 minutes. And I knew that that he would unravel. I just didn't know it would happen so soon. And I didn't know we'd have a cold, which is really, really hard and makes things much worse. And it was just the perfect storm of disaster.
Oh yeah. The first sound of his voice. I remember that.
Yeah, it was rough.
Speaking of digestive issues, I hadn't seen Rice Pringles in a while. Hey,
can I just complain about this? Inveterate liars should not be paid as political consultants by reputable news organizations. I'm sorry. Like if your job has been to tell lies in public at one point, a news organization should not then present you to their audience as somebody worth listening to. That is insane to me.
And it was on the taxpayer dime.
It's utterly insane to me. ABC News political contributor Reince Priebus. Fuck you, dude. I forgot
about this guy.
I really, this is like when, who was it? CNN who went and hired Corey Lewandowski for 5 minutes. And like, I understand it's all access journalism, right? Everybody is paying both sides so they can get access to guests, whatever. I think it's despicable and I think it shouldn't be done. And it's one of the things I hate about broadcast media. I'm sorry.
Well, see,
I feel very strongly about this.
This is because broadcast media is not built for Donald Trump. It's just not. Like the idea of having both sides represented is good in theory. In fact, essential to how we, I don't know, think about ideas. But you can't do it with Donald Trump because it means putting people on your platform that told you the 2020 election was stolen, covered for Donald Trump after he refused to engage in the peaceful transfer of power, and have been lying about things ever since.
Yeah, I just think it is irresponsible for news organizations to present people like that to their audience. I mean, it just is. It drives me nuts. It's, it's one thing to have political operators, like to have like Joe Trippi and Karl Rove on because they're campaign professionals. That is different than having a guy like Reince whose job was to lie in public. F that guy.
Speaking of lying in public, this thing looks like it's about to start.
We're about to go, guys. We're going to hop back on at the commercial breaks and talk, and then we'll be on for a long show after that. Hang with us if you can stomach it. If not, no judgments. We understand.
I'll judge you. Hang out with us.
I'll say to you all what AB and I used to say. Good luck, America.
Showdown here in Philadelphia between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. Their first face-to-face meeting in this presidential election, their first face-to-face meeting ever.
A historic race for president upended just weeks ago. President Biden withdrawing after his last debate. Donald Trump now up against a new opponent.
The candidates separated by the smallest of margins, essentially tied in the polls nationally and in the key battlegrounds, including right here in Pennsylvania, all still very much in play. The ABC News presidential debate starts right now.
This is an ABC News special, the most consequential moment of this campaign. Kamala Harris.
Together, we will chart a new way forward.
Donald Trump.
We will soon be a great nation again.
Face to face, historic. The ABC News presidential debate. Here now, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Good evening, I'm David Muir, and thank you for joining us for tonight's ABC News presidential debate. We want to welcome viewers watching on ABC and around the world tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump are just moments away from taking the stage in this unprecedented race for president.
And I'm Lindsay Davis. Tonight's meeting could be the most consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day now less than 2 months away. For Vice President Kamala Harris, this is her first debate since President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st. Of course, that decision followed his debate against President Donald Trump in June. Since then, this race has taken on an entirely new dynamic.
And that brings us to the rules of tonight's debate. 90 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. No topics or questions have been shared with the campaigns. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions, and this is the clock. That's what they'll be seeing. 2 minutes for rebuttals and 1 minute for follow-ups, clarifications, or responses. Their microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn to speak. No pre-written notes allowed. There is no audience here tonight in this hall at the National Constitution Center. This is an intimate setting for 2 candidates who have never met.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
Nice to see you. Have fun.
Thank you.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their #1 issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year, because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because it was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
It's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response. And you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions, very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime, a violation to their body, does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came
Well,
to
I
your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of when they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea and how unfair that would have been. Part of the reason they lost to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free, but they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D. And I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. So wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years, they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. And that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer the question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question. Would you veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill, which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first. And I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country. And it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country. And if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, will end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well,
All
I've
this,
seen people on television.
let me just say here, this is
the people on television say
clear-
my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
But
television.
the people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you. Because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper, he was no good, I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book, because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they? But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier. So let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, Crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof, despite their fraudulent statements that they made. Crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris,
FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud. Just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people.
Vice President
stop
Harris,
him.
thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation
We do have a lot
that went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well,
response?
first of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead. Fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that
for
we
the
have to get
environment
to.
that
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
You might ask her that
You
question.
were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the president of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say, we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people They covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate, because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border, because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The president of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Right. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you, because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that.
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say
sarcastically. You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about it. An election is fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls. And we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them Republican.
No judge looked at it.
And said
they said we didn't have standing.
Fraud.
That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter, because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I
up.
think we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
Yes.
to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters, because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation. And now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Well, that was something. Sarah, go.
Greatest debate performance in my lifetime. This is outstanding. Better than anything we could imagine. Sam Stein, if you are not going to get on board with how good she is doing right now, she is baiting him. He is taking him hook, line, and sinker. He's melting down. She is nailing every part of it. I'm sorry. It is exceeding all expectations. What are you laughing at, bro?
I'm not laughing. I wish we could bottle this energy and sell it on the market because there's an abundance of it. It's just hard to. Hold on. I'll just say the predominant thing to me is how easily this man is baited. I mean, the most. I think the abortion section was the most powerful one, and probably will have the most resonance. But the most illustrative section for me was when it was about immigration, and all she had to do was like say something. I don't even remember what the debate was, and he just got completely transported onto a topic that was unrelated to what is easily the best topic for him. I mean, it was the clear strategy going in, throw out this chum for him to go after, and time again, he has just done it. It's just so easy.
AB?
Okay. I'm just out of my mind. I'm so relieved. I'm so pumped. And I just want to say, yeah, I think it's so much fun to listen to how crazy he is. We have a nation that's dying, David. Like every time he says the worst thing and poops the diaper, the moderator's like, yeah, we have to move on to the next question, Mr. President. I mean, it literally couldn't be worse. There were moments that were pure SNL. But let's just give her some credit. She did the work.
Yeah, she did the work.
We had the most unbelievable performances and answers that were deeply prepared. She spent so long memorizing all of this. She had her abortion thing prepared. She had this SCOTUS and the immunity stuff. January 6th in Charlottesville, the list of his crimes, why Republicans were supporting her, who was supporting her, the way that she just the confidence that she was able to project, turning to him and say, world leaders are laughing at you and they think you're race. So she was.
Well, she did the work. Yeah.
And I
she
really
did the work.
Credit for that. Just Sam, I just want to say, I have complained in the past that in 2019 she was lazy. She did not put in the work. She had 4 positions on Medicare for All. Healthcare was the most important issue to the Democratic Party in 2019. She just didn't care. This woman worked her ass off to put this performance in, and I just give her props.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Sorry to rush in here. She did the work. She baited him, just to correction, with the thing about his rally sizes. I mean, that was obviously a planted trap for him. He fell into it, but that's work, right? That is practice. I will also say he didn't do the work. I mean, he just did. The answer about an easy question, would you veto a national abortion ban? He must have known it was coming. Not only did he not have an answer to it, he then threw J.D. Vance under the bus. Mm-hmm. The question about did you lose by a whisker surely must have known that was coming, saying sarcasm. It's as if he thought he could just riff it. And the contrast is just it's remarkable. But I think AB's absolutely right. Credit goes to her. She did the work. I think the secondary story is that he came in just not prepared for this.
Do you guys, I noted to our Slack group like 12 or 15 minutes in, like this is the most restrained, disciplined performance I've seen from him. And that was before the thing about his rallies. It felt like for the last 40 minutes, he was just shouting. Yeah. Was that me? Because I'm listening on headphones, but he has seemed very sort of angry and ranty in ways that I think will not come off well. But I don't know. What are you guys, Sarah? What are you picking up off of his performance, just in terms of the vibes and him trying to do what he wanted to do?
He is sputtering. He is totally out of control. But he keeps doing the funniest things. It's like, did somebody say this in the Slack? But it's like all of right-wing Twitter is like what's debating right now.
He's cat turd. He's cat turd.
Yeah.
He went to Viktor Orban for validation, like for a character reference. Yeah. That was great. He like went on a crazy rant about the eating pets. They're going to eat your pets. They got fact-checked in real time. He sounds deranged, and not in like is it back on?
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll come back. We'll be back.
Okay.
Look, Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. we're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's, where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here.
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know, is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president, you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words. So
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently over the course of his career attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young Black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first Black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your 3rd time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five. They admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up.
I want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country, one who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction, to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's
Trump,
turn back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
She
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
Thank you,
That's
Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump,
the
President
former
Trump.
president has
No,
said
I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're
I
gonna
just need to
move on,
respond
Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this is
multiple
now
times.
your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up, they wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan.
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something. I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped. I am president. We will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
Vice
Pass as
President
prologue
Harris,
in
thank
terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue
Well,
that's important for a
She
lot
made
of
a mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get.
President
People
Trump-
are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs a month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
So we'll talk here for a couple minutes, then we will come back for the closing statements. Although I imagine that Corey is going to want to throw the towel in, Roberto Duran style, no mas. Let's just go around the horn real quick. Sarah?
I mean, it's not getting better for him. That part was kind of just more of the same. Like, now we're in the groove. She is super comfortable. It's all kind of running together for me in terms of every answer she gives is strong. Every single answer he gives is incoherent. He's on defense all night. I do think there's a couple devices she's employing that I think are really strong.
Hey, I'm sorry, hold on, Sarah. Somebody's knocking on their microphone. Just,
Me.
Watch it. Yeah, don't stop that, Sam.
I'm having a Trump-like moment here, messing things up.
Where, I mean, this thing that she's doing where she is looking directly at him, and then she is saying, like, she keeps kind of pivoting from her answer into and that's why we need to turn the page, and that's why we need to move away from the failed policy, you know, like she is, and that's why I think it was the race thing, right? Like, I thought she handled that extremely well. There was a little bit in there that I didn't think she needed, but I thought, like, generally her pushing back on him dividing us, not making it about race. And when she does the thing where she pivots at the end to saying, I want to be about you, I want to help you guys, like, that is working for her. Because at no point does he do anything remotely like that.
AB?
Yeah, I mean, there's like a dead body on the stage. It's so much worse than I thought it would be. And again,
she means better. She means better.
I mean, worse for Trump. I mean, I really thought he could just pull through this and it wouldn't take so long. And I come back to it. Her combination of putting the prep in and giving this masterclass while also seeming really like she's being herself. She hasn't been too indulgent. I actually like the look I like her, like, pitying look. He can never look at her. And she's like, oh dear man at the end of the bar who's been here since 1:00 this afternoon and is incoherent and ranting. But she's so substantive. And as Sarah said, we'll bring it back. Just a few minutes ago, I can't even remember what it was. It was like another chance for her to totally gratuitously, like, just cut open his dead body. And she was like, you know what? Back to you, Americans. This is why I want to help you out with the latest tax deduction or tax credit and invest in your small business. It's like, she knows it's over.
Hey, it's Tim.
Hey everybody! I got somewhere really important to be after this, and it's kind of work, but not really. Actually, I just want to go back to the spin room and taunt the MAGA people. So please, I if it's a short takeaway, please don't take this joy away from me. But I wanted to be with you guys first. Do you think that they'll have anything positive to say? Like, what is even their spin for tonight?
They put
They're mad at the moderators.
They're mad at the moderators.
Moderator, yeah.
They're mad at the moderators.
Guys, they've put out they actually have put out a statement already.
Please read.
Declaring that they've won the debate.
Oh,
Yes. No, the title is Trump Campaign Statement on President Trump's Debate Victory. Released clearly before the debate had ended. Quote, President Trump delivered a masterful debate performance tonight, prosecuting Kamala Harris's abysmal record of failure that has hurt Americans for the last 4 years.
Okay, interesting. That was maybe whoever wrote that statement should have maybe been on the stage, because Donald Trump was seething. I even forget the word. His words were gibberish. But I think the most important takeaway is you watch that debate on mute. He is angry. His makeup looks bad. He looks old. He looks upset. He's like, he's like a cranky old man that had something taken from him that he deserves. Like I think he wanted to hit her. Like he could not look at her. Like he could. If you just go rewatch the whole debate, a couple of times he did this. Where he would glance with his eye and he'd grind his teeth when he looked at her. But he would not look at her. She stared him down the whole time, like the alpha. He would not look at her. He was so upset. His body language was horrific. We're doing closing statements?
All right, Tim, if you can hang. If not,
I'll hang. You've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughing. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center.
That is
I'm
rough.
Lindsay
Well,
Davis.
and I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world and from all of us here at ABC News.
What was he talking about there with Germany, Sarah?
Energy policy?
They're power plants, normal power plants, normal power plants.
Look, I'm for fracking. I love fracking. I mean, I think Sam, I don't know, you're not Sam, but besides Sam, we have unanimity on this panel for fracking. We have a strong fracking support on this panel. But the closing statement, framing your closing statement around the Germany energy policy and how much you hate Joe Biden. Is Tulsi running a long con? I think is my best theory.
Possible.
Tulsi has been a Democrat, but just went deep undercover in MAGA so that she could prep Donald Trump for this debate
Donnie Brasco.
sabotage him. That's my best theory. Just a couple of notes before I leave. He substantively, it was literally as if he was not prepped. He had no answer on several of the issues that he could have easily expected. Like her abortion answer was crisp and powerful. His abortion answer was gobbledygook. Immigration, she baited him into talking about his crowd sizes during the immigration answer. He had no answer on healthcare. Was where he said he has the concepts of some plans. On the predictable things, I guess he had prepared a counter answer on the fact that all of the staff won't support him. Which is like, I fire people. Like that was really the one time where it felt like he had a prepped counterpunch that he used. He didn't have to use any of those in the Biden debate, right? So maybe who knows what that prep was like. But she, on the other hand, she was wonderful in her own right. So I don't want to give credit to the coaching, but just like scoring on points, like you could tell what she was coached to do. She was always focused on being on offense. She did not get bogged down in his bullshit. She was pivoting back to talking about the future versus the past. On the challenging issues like fracking, she had crisp answers. She had on foreign policy where you knew that there was a commander-in-chief test. She's out there dropping the names of tanks and dropping the names of weapons. There were just several moments, and obviously on abortion, as I mentioned, there were several moments where you could tell what the prep was. She executed it, and it was true to herself. And at the beginning, it felt a little talking pointy, but as she was getting her momentum over the course of the thing, it started to get much more natural.
Tim, I have a couple questions for you because you've been as someone who's done debates and been backstage with candidates. I don't want to bring up too sore subjects. Candidates who've lost debates. One thing, when it's not going well, what's it like for the team?
It's horrible. I mean, everybody knew 20 minutes in. We knew 5 minutes in Atlanta, but everybody knew 20 minutes in this time, right? That it was going horrible for Trump. And, you can just, the body language, like even around the spin room. Now, it's different from being on the team, but around the spin room, you have the Fox pundits and you have the MSNBC, right? So you can sense the energy of the spin room shifting. And, look, what you're doing if you're on a losing debate, which is what you did on that statement, and I've been with losing debates, is you try to grab onto one or two things, right? And you just focus on it, right? You're just like, okay, we're going to beat this to death. We're going to try to win the post-game spin by focusing on whatever. We won this one thing on this one point. He didn't win on any points. No, literally, what do you
not a
do?
single moment.
My second question, quick second question.
Yeah, sorry.
You mentioned it, and I think it bears repeating. As much as the policy contrast and the rhetoric and all that. I thought one of the real stories tonight was the visual contrast in his sort of dour expression. He could not look at her, and she's sitting there sort of like curiously looking at him, being like, "You fool." What?
Yeah.
And I, as someone who's prepped for this stuff, how much goes into prepping for that visual contrast?
I think more this time. I talked to Simone about this morning. Again, I think that it's a unique challenge for women. And I think it's a unique challenge in dealing with Trump because Trump is so visual and so TV focused. So you could tell that she prepped it. I don't think he did. Like I don't think he thought about it. I think
it was crazy to me. He did not look at her.
He was doing his natural glower. And Alex Castellanos, who I hate, and who has completely sold out to Donald Trump, and so I hate to give him credit for anything. He has a rule of thumb about debates, which is like put it on mute. He's like, you can put it on mute and know who won almost every debate just by putting it on mute. And that was true as hell in Atlanta, and it was true tonight.
Sarah, come on.
I need a cigarette.
I'm gonna have one. So I want to hear Sarah's. Can I get a rapid fire of the other three? Everybody, rapid fire the other three before I go get a cigarette and start taunting MAGA people.
All right. So just here's the thing. Going into this, one of the things that we were talking about is like, she's got to do a million things, right? She's got to be strong, but also she's got to bait him, but she's also got to be substantive. But she also needs to walk the line between, she can't make too many faces. And she literally nailed all the things. She nailed all the things. And as a bonus, because we've been so good and Trump has been so bad, we had moderators do a few real-time fact checks.
Yeah.
A few real-time. And you know what? They're going to say it was a 3-on-1 debate, and they're going to whine about the refs because that's what you do when you lose on points, on substance, and on style. You whine about the refs. And so that's what they're going to do. But that's all they've got. Yeah. It's all they've got. Because it's not like they didn't ask Trump hard questions, and it's not like they didn't ask her hard questions, right? They all got the hardest ones. They got the tough ones.
It was worse than that, though. They gave Trump places to play. They said, here's 2 minutes, talk about immigration. And because she said your rallies are not that big, he spent, a minute and a half going off on that.
People got bored and they leave.
My question for
they served things up on a platter and he couldn't figure out how to hit it. It was crazy.
Sarah, AB, my only potential worry, because it does nothing for me because I was kind of yassing it. Do we feel like she went overkill a little bit on all the faces? Do we worry a little bit about backlash among some of the focus group type people? That was my only nagging worry. No.
So I'm going to do some in the morning, and okay. I already got into it with Frank Luntz on this because he was criticizing her on it. Here's the thing. For the most part, she was giving him the kind of bewildered look of like, what are you talking about?
Dog eating man.
In a way that I felt was like, she's all of us. We're all making this face. This is the face that one makes when a lunatic is ranting at you from 5 feet away. And so I don't know that I'll wait and see. I do think that this is one of those moments I am very cautious about on this in particular. I have a strong point of view about how I believe she did. I think it will be interesting to hear the focus groups because there is a lot of baked in kind of, the moderators were giving Trump a hard time. Like they're susceptible to those types of things because they think it's like good analysis. And so I'll wait and see whether they kind of are like, I didn't like the faces she was making, but I don't know. For the most part, even trying to look at it through the lens of voters, she was crisp. She was firm. She did all the things. She talked about him cozying up to dictators. Like, I'm not sure. The only open door that I think she missed, I think she knocked out every single one. The only one is, I do wish she had answered the question about changing the positions by saying that she had learned during her time as vice president, right? Like making a thing. But I don't know. That's all. That's all I got. Everything else, when it came up, she knew exactly where to go. She exceeded all expectations in that debate performance. It was outstanding.
AB?
I think her very first, when she put her chin in her hands, it was a little affected. But as the debate wore on and he pooped the diaper, she was literally looking at him almost with empathy, like, oh dear, old man, ranting and drooling. With your undergarments smelling, things are really problematic. So I thought her her actual face for 95% of it was perfect. It was like, as Sarah described, like bewildered, kind of also like, wow, I can't believe that this is even happening. Like, I mean, it's like, I'm shocked, but I'm, sort of pleased, but I'm just sitting here taking it all in. And it wasn't like fake toughness. What I love is every moment when she was tough just was so smooth. And that is so right. That's like,
it was so good. I'm leaving though. I'm leaving on dirty underpants because JVL. I want to save it. I want to be fresh with you for the next level tomorrow, and I'll hopefully have material about. Well, we already did a little, Sarah. I want to have some material for the next level, which is me trolling people in the spin room. I'll see y'all soon. Love
Go
you
with
guys.
God,
Bye.
Timothy. Go with God. So
what about you, Mr. Darkness, my dark clouded friend?
Yeah, man. How you feeling?
Express joy, JVL. Express it.
It was the most masterful presidential level debate performance I think I've seen. The number 2 here would probably be the first Romney performance against Obama, which is a thing that the history books all say that Obama shit the bed on that. And I just disagree. I thought Obama gave a very pedestrian, very average debate performance, and Romney was as good as I've ever seen anybody. And I'm not a Romney guy. Like that was the debate of his life. That was like the night that he goes out and scores 65 points in a playoff game. And I think that's what she just did. I mean, it was close for the first like 7 minutes, and then she was twitchy and she was a little dry mouthed. And once she settled in, I don't think Trump has a single handhold coming out of this, other than the moderators were mean to me, which, I mean, the only response to that is, okay, well then don't fucking lie at the debate.
Right.
It's very easy. If you don't want to be fact checked, don't say things which are demonstrably untrue.
Well, he's already put out his first truth, which is exactly what you predicted. Quote, I thought that was my best debate ever, especially since it was 3-on-1. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's what
it wasn't his best. I mean, if we could also just say, Trump has had good debates. I think he won almost every debate he was in during the 2016 Republican primaries. Like he can be very effective in a non-traditional way. He was not effective in any way, and I just think it was both a tactical and strategic victory at every single level for her. And as I said to people on this live stream before we do this, I mean, look, everybody here is on the side of team democracy. We don't do both sides bullshit here, but we're also not going to put the shine on you. I mean, nobody here is going to tell you that, that she did great if she did terribly. That's not what
we're the ones who told you Biden needed to drop out after the last one. We were too much unhappiness.
Can we play a game here? I want to do what people think will be the first bit that the Harris people turn into a campaign ad from this debate.
The abortion soundbite.
Which one? There's 2. There's one where he says the Supreme Court was genius for overturning Roe, and then there's one where he says he refuses to say whether he'd veto a national abortion ban.
Oh, I was thinking about what they would clip of her. Like,
I'm thinking what the clip of
him.
No, with him, it'll be the Obamacare, and it'll be saying, I don't have a plan. I have the concept of a plan. Which is an unfucking believable thing to say.
It's crazy.
Presidential
it's crazy.
I have the concept of a plan.
So to know that you just did Obamacare repeal and it killed you politically, and to go back into that well and be like, you know what? We're going to do it again, but I'm not even going to tell you what it is. It's like so nuts to me.
She also crushed that part by evoking John McCain.
Yeah.
Way to go. Man, she had everything that she had in the can. She deployed at exactly the right time.
Yeah. I mean, I do want to give a great deal of credit to her staff, and which is ultimately a credit to her, right? I mean, she is the campaign, the staff is a representation of her. So it reflects, I mean, she executed everything, but she was as well prepared as any candidate I've ever seen at one of these, both on the command of things, but also on the emotional side of it. Like, she was in the right headspace for it. And she, again, I mean, So at the strategic level, right? The strategic level is, pivoting back to you. It's about, you, the people. It's about the future, not the past. But the tactical stuff is all the baiting, right? And her tactics and strategy were perfectly aligned and were very, very well thought out and were deployed perfectly. And her campaign, the team that worked with her to prep her for this, did as good a job as any campaign team has ever done for one of these things, I think. And here's the thing, Sarah. I kept thinking about your focus groups and the people who said things like, well, I just want to know more. I want to see, what. I just feel like if those people watch this and don't come away saying, basically saying, I'm now off the fence, I'm 90 for 10 for Harris, then I don't know what is what anymore. And I guess that's my one Debbie Downer thing is, after a night like this, and we'll see what the numbers are. My guess is we'll have like 55 million people watched it, maybe a little more than that.
I bet the numbers are high. I mean, just look, everybody, it's all I heard. Everybody was going to watch the debate.
Yeah.
Like in a way that they don't watch the State of the Union, in the way that they don't watch conventions, they were going to watch the debate. Debates are high drama in a way that this other stuff isn't.
A week from now, if she hasn't gone up 3 points, then I will be in a dark place about like the character of the American people, because I just don't understand how anybody could watch that and say, anybody who's undecided, like, I don't expect the MAGAs to peel off. Like, we know what they are, right? But we do have like a big chunk of like 8% of voters who are undecided. And if they like split 50-50 on this, I'm like, I don't even know what to say.
He's going to still be at his 46, 47, 48, right? Like, that's just given. It's the question is, can she get that?
Could she get to 52?
Can she get
That's
to 51,
the question.
52?
Can she get to
Right.
51, 51 and a half? I don't know. So Sarah, tell me, do a little prediction for me, Sarah, about the type of things that your flippers and your disaffected Trump voters, what do you think you'll hear from them? And what will surprise you if you hear it from them?
I guess I'd be surprised if they were like said that they thought Trump did well. I mean, because here's the thing, even in the debate with Biden, the voters didn't think Trump had done well. Like the swing voters still, and this is where the Biden team in their spin last time was like, well, they didn't like Trump either. And that was true. The voters in the focus groups, the swing voters, sort of the down on Trump voters that voted for Trump, holding their nose, they were like, yeah, Biden totally shit the bed. He's too old, but like Trump's terrible. And I feel like what she did and what she had to do, right, was make an affirmative case for why her. And she did that all night long. She's like, I'm here for you. This guy's going to do nothing for you. I'm here for you. I'm ready to turn the page. It's about generational change. It's about small businesses. It's about the economy. Like I don't know if they go in there tomorrow night or tomorrow morning, if they come in and say, yeah, I watched it and I don't know, I didn't think she was that good. Then I guess that's going to say a lot about the fact that people have just decided they don't want
Sarah.
That they just don't want to, that they just don't want to like her for whatever reason.
For whatever reason.
But I don't think that's what's going to happen.
Let's hope, man. Look, I want to be wrong. I want to be wrong.
What else could she have done tonight? That's the thing. It's like, what else could she have done tonight?
Yeah, like this. That's it. She
did what we said. We said, look, she needs to go out there and show she's tough on the world stage. Done. She needs to show she's got a vision for the future. Done. She needs to talk about inflation. Done. She needs to make the contrast between future and past. Done. Like, there's not much else she could have done. I just don't know. Don't know what else. I mean,
look, nobody cares about policy anymore. But this is as much as new centrist, new Democrat as you could possibly get, right? She's down with it on fracking. She's making big pitches to family formation, which is like a conservative JVL natalist thing. She leads in her first answer with small business owners and how important she is. Talks about how she's a gun owner. I mean, this is the most centrist possible positioning for a Democratic candidate. Yes.
I will just say something just broke on the internet. Taylor Swift announcing she is endorsing tonight, which adds to the
What?
momentum. Yeah.
Tay
little
Tay, is
Instagram
that
post.
real? Is this a real thing, or is this like Beyonce is going to
It's
show
her
up at the
Instagram, and
convention?
she's pictured with a cat. I wish we can get this on the
good
live stream. She watched the debate tonight. Like many of you, I watched the debate tonight. If you haven't already, now was a great time to do your research on the issues at hand. Blah blah blah. I will be casting my vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in the 2024 presidential election. And there we go.
Tay Tay, T Swizzle. I don't know. I mean, I just, as you say, Sam, I don't think there's anything else. Look,
What
God
else?
knows, I am always here to pick nits and to tell
Right.
people what they could have done better. I don't think there's anything she could have done better. AB, can you think of anything?
I really don't. I mean, the only thing on inflation I want is for her to say, if Donald Trump was still president in 2021 and 2022, he would have inherited the same issues with inflation that were global because of gnarled supply chains that we did and were caused by his handling of COVID in 2020. But she, I thought, was pitch perfect on these answers. And really, let's get back to like the complaint from the right, which is all they have is that the moderators weren't fair and they were in it for Harris. They hit her on everything. All the domestic policy issues she switched on. Afghanistan, Israel. I mean, one thing after the border, one thing after another. She got all those questions. She was just able to answer them. And as you guys have pointed out, deploy devices to deflect or to bait him after she gave a good substantive answer. That's why it was masterful. And in thinking, I just like you, I was thinking of Sarah's focus groups. And I was thinking, they're watching this guy, because I too appreciated their reaction in June, which was like, he didn't do a good job either. Like we all thought Biden melted down so badly that we thought Trump did a good job. And the focus group respondents were like, no. And listening to Trump say that Biden doesn't know he's alive, that she hates Biden, that she hates Israel, that it's not going to exist in 2 years. She hates the Arab population. The whole population is going to be blown up. This is a crazy man. I mean, this is not a serious, he didn't do the work. He didn't have serious responses. He sounded like a lunatic. There are concepts and options we have, and you'll be hearing about it. He almost said in 2 weeks for healthcare. And then he said in the not so distant future, if you are a swing voter, if you're one of the last persuadable people, and you are looking to be sold by Donald Trump, you could not find anything he was selling you tonight.
Well, and to that point,
about prepping for this.
To that point, and I'm trying to get Caputo to write this, but he'll do it. But like, it's amazing how much of the conversation Trump engages in is just like online catnip. I hate to use the word catnip because cats are so prominent these days. But I mean, just like the whole thing, like Springfield eating dogs shit. Like, come on, man. Like
he brought up Springfield twice within the first 17 minutes.
It's like where, I mean, he's so clearly online. And
you saw it on television, Sam.
Yeah,
I saw
you're
a
right.
person on television.
There's a dead dog.
He sounded like fucking Archie Bunker there. Like it was
Yeah.
literally, I was watching my shows.
Archie
I saw
Bunker,
the
but
man
like
on
for
the
the Twitter
TV
age.
with the diabetes, and he said they were eating dogs.
Yeah. And I just
my
think
God.
that's, I think to AB's point, like it kind of affects, it clearly affects not just the stuff he talks about, just the way he comes off, right? It's like, who is this raving lunatic who's talking about stuff I've never heard of? Like, I mean, in the greatest concern in his world is transgender operations for kids in schools, which doesn't happen, but like everyone on the online right talks about it. And so clearly this is the thing he prioritizes in these conversations. I just have to wonder, like, voters aren't there, like they're not talking about these things day in and day out. Do the Trump people not recognize this? Maybe I'm wrong. Sarah, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
You know, well, just thinking about it for a second, one of the things that Trump often does that I think buys him a little space with some of these voters is that he's funny. Like he's funny in a way that I find him repellent, but like
tonight.
he can be funny and charming in his own way that like voters are like, he's joking around or whatever. He had none of these. He didn't even have sort of the like nasty woman stuff that's like even kind of like fun for his people. Like it was all gibberish. It was tough to find the thread of what he was talking about. He did not look like he was having fun, right? Like there was no this is one of the things that I always sort of get annoyed about, right? I'm like, stop saying joy, like convey joy. Stop, like Donald Trump don't say you're funny, be funny. Like it's this, and Donald Trump is good at showing, not telling, right? Keeping things light and like breezy and moving. Not tonight. And this was, I'm not gonna, this is a little bad of me, but like, this was everything I said. I don't know. This was everything I said, is that she didn't need, although I was saying a lot, because I was like doing a lot of TV. What does she need to do? And I was like, look, she just needs to be competent, have command of the issues, and like Trump will rattle himself. Now, I think that I was trying to not have to have her do too much, because there was so much of like, well, she's got to be substantive, but she's also got to bait him. And I was like, yeah, it's a lot to do. She did do both, but like mostly she was being substantive. And as a result, he was losing his mind. Like she'd throw a little bit out there and he'd go hook, line, and sinker for it. And he wasn't having fun and he wasn't being light. And she laughed a couple times and her faces are just like, yeah, you're nuts. And like, I don't think voters respond to him in part because they feel like he is the one winning. He is the one dominating. He is the one that's like keeping it breezy. I don't think there was a whole lot for a voter who doesn't already like him a ton to like find to like in that.
Yeah, but we knew that like he was never going to win these people. He's hit his ceiling. He needs to bring her down. He wasn't going to grow his tent. All those undecided voters really were not considering him as a serious option. They just needed to hear from Harris. And his job tonight was to take her down. And he got so distracted by the bait that she threw at him that he didn't do it. I mean, that was it. He just got baited into a bunch of own goals. That's it.
All right. Two things, because we're starting to run long here. First of all, Taylor signed her endorsement, childless cat lady, which is amazing. And
I couldn't get better.
And second, I mean, I have to do it because it's on brand, but I would remind people, how did you feel after the first Hillary Clinton Donald Trump debate? Because I don't know if you guys remember that, but that was also one of these like this. I mean, he was a ranting crazy man and Hillary Clinton had a very competent performance. And I mean, I remember, so the morning after that, I went to the offices of the Weekly Standard and I talked with I won't name my colleague, but somebody who is very, very pro MAGA now and who was like very MAGA curious at the time. And I said, so what do you think? And he said, well, it's clear he can't be president because nobody that unqualified, he totally disqualified himself from the presidency last night. We can't allow somebody like that to be president. This is somebody who was, even at the time, was very populist, nationalist, MAGA curious. So like, I see you in the chat, Sebastian, telling me not to harsh on people. I just want to remind people that we have seen this particular movie before.
I don't think
7 years ago.
I don't think so.
8 years ago.
I don't think that Clinton performance was dominating the way, you know what? Kamala Harris was not unburdened by what has been. She was incorporating what has been in this. Like she was bringing all of the things that we've learned to this about Trump and how you do it. And like she was making fun of him at certain points. She was pitying him at certain points. Like she wasn't doing deplorables. You know, I feel like she hit him hard in a way that incorporated just the understanding that we have of how people perceive this. And like Hillary Clinton, this is something that I sort of want to hammer over and over again, that Hillary Clinton's tagline was, I'm with her. And for Hillary Clinton, it was constantly, we had to be like, okay, this is about Hillary Clinton and her moment. Kamala Harris, and it's embodied by her for the people, but she is doing this thing where every chance she gets, she's saying this is about you and who's going to do the thing for you. That is not how Hillary Clinton did those things, right? It was about landing points on Trump. Kamala Harris both landed those points on Trump and turned generational change. We're tired of this. We're bored. And I'm going to do shit for you. I care about you.
I would just add one other thing, that Hillary's case against Trump was about a hypothetical Trump administration, what he would do as president.
True.
Kamala's case against Trump was, You aren't going to apologize for January 6th. You're not saying you do anything differently. You are cheering on the overturning of Roe v. Wade. You torpedoed, the immigration border bill. Like, those are not theoreticals or hypotheticals. Yeah. She's pointing to a record. And I think the most powerful part for her was saying time and again, look, we saw what this was. We can't go back to this. Hillary had no ability to say that because ultimately she was the past and he was an unknown.
Yeah. All right. Let me go around the horn. I'm going to start with you, AB. A week from now, what is the polling average nationally?
Why do we have to do this? There was one balance. We're just going to be the Nate Silver model gets worse by the hour. It's like 15% to 85 right now pro Trump. I don't want to do polls. I want to believe that this night couldn't have been better. Taylor Swift, the childless cat lady, has weighed in. Kamala Harris did everything and then some. She's so, like Sarah said, far exceeded our expectations of what would be the best night for her and what would be doing the best job possible. Trump drowned. He just drowned. And Tim spoke with Lindsey Graham in the spin room.
Oh, yeah. Tell them.
He said the debate team should be fired and Trump was unprepared and it's a disaster. Of course, it's always somebody else's fault. So
Trump has no agency. None.
That's not his fault.
Powerless. And remember, we've always, in the past, they've always been like, it's so great that he doesn't do any mock debates because he's the man. He doesn't have to. He just shoots the shit with us at Mar-a-Lago with this iPad when he's doing the DJ moves and planning all the music and stopping by weddings. And he's just on the fly because he's so confident and natural. And that's supposed to be great. And he's not supposed to put in the work. So I just want to just really feel good about this. And
all right, I'll let you enjoy it. Maybe.
In thinking of the small universe of people who are just in it for what did they tell me that's about me, that's what she did. He didn't talk to them about them. He bashed her and Biden. He was a lunatic. And she, like Sarah said, was so focused on always driving it back to you, and substantively. And she did everything she could. I mean, really, I had my concerns about tonight. She has refused to be unscripted. And she was just, it was so artful. It was so prepped. It was so strategic. I don't know what the polls will be, but she couldn't have done it better.
All right, Sarah, you're going to get the last word. So, Sam, right now, the Real Clear political average has Harris 48.4, Trump 47.3. A week from now, what is it?
So this is the thing. I think it goes. It'd be very surprising if she didn't get some bump from this. But, these things are so cyclical. Like, we're going to have 3 or 4 more cycles of despair, 3 or 4 more cycles of joy. We'll all go up to election night, wanting to just chew our nails and puking or dry heaving everywhere. The thing I probably can say with more certainty is that I fully expect that in the next day or two, Trump will do something outlandish.
Yes.
As he always does in moments
set himself
of bad
on
news.
fire, right? Change the story.
Change story in some truly outlandish way.
He'll go to Springfield, Ohio, and actually eat a dog himself.
He'll bring RFK Jr. to do that.
Yeah.
All right, he's got more experience in that field. But yeah, that's what I expect because he has sort of one play in the old playbook. But this is going to be. I just want people to understand. This will be a close election. There are no knockout blows. There are things that help on the margins, and that matters. But the idea that people will say, "Oh, wow, it's so clear now. She should be up 55-45." That's just not practical. It's not how it works. Don't get your hopes up in that sense. Doesn't mean you can't sit here and say that was a really wonderful night for Kamala Harris, because it was. But we just shouldn't expect tectonic shifts like that.
We do not need tectonic shifts in the national polling averages.
Yeah.
We need a 3-point bump in Pennsylvania where she starts to break away in that state, because she's breaking away in Michigan and Wisconsin and in Nebraska too. She just needs Pennsylvania. So we need to start moving her there. That's the big thing I want to see. The national averages probably goes to 49, 46 or something like that, but she's got to move up in Pennsylvania. That's the ball game. A couple of last things I want to point out. One, Donald Trump was given a chance to stand with Ukraine. He didn't take it. He refused to stand with Ukraine. Also, I thought her answer on Israel was quite good, which I think might, she called Hamas terrorists, which was important. She led with that. And so I wonder if that didn't help her with some people who felt like she's been a little soft on that. I mean, I meant to kind of ask you guys what she thought. Here's the thing, though, that's my big takeaway. You guys are hanging out in the spin room, Kamala people, but Kamala people, if you're listening, you guys made a mistake. You thought you could run all the way on vibes, right? But this last weekend showed you that you couldn't, right? That there's a limitation and that now we are in the fight to get to 50. You're in the fight to get to 50%. You're in the fight to get to your upside. And that means all gas, no brakes. It means going out there. She should be feeling herself now. She has shown that she can do this. Put her in front of people. Put her on TV. Put her in front of the influencers with the digital stuff, the TikToks, whatever the kids do. I don't care. Get her out there. Have her talking to people. And what is it? Release the Kraken. I don't know. She's good. Let her do it. Let her do it.
All right. There it is. Sarah Longwell, who is always right. Sarah and I will be with Tim tomorrow for the next level. We're going to have pieces and reaction from across the entire Bulwark staff coming at you over the next few hours. There will be stuff over on thebulwark.com. There will be video reactions here on the YouTube channel. If you're new with us, hit follow, hit like, stay with us. We're good. And if you haven't been over to thebulwark.com, go over there, sign up, join Bulwark Plus, do all the stuff. It's going to be a wild 8 weeks. It's going to be a wild 8 weeks. And it could be great and could be very energizing, and it could be terrible. But whatever it's going to be, like, we should go through it together. All right, guys, Thanks a lot. We will see you soon. Bye.